Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Ming of Revolution. Breaking news. Two U.S. fighter pilots captured after their plane was shot down in Iran. This is very disturbing. Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, I'm hearing that plenty of U.S. soldiers have been killed in the operation trying to save these captured pilots. Their helicopters are being hit. This is a humiliating day. Trump said Iran didn't have no air defense systems. Trump is a liar.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Kelly O'Grady in New York. Now, this morning, U.S. officials confirmed that an American fighter jet has gone down in Iran and a search is underway for the crew. Iranian state-run television has shown images of what it claims is wreckage of the missing plane and says the government is offering a reward for the recovery of any Americans. This is the first confirmed loss of a U.S. jet in Iran since the war began more than a month ago. I want to bring in senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. He has the very latest from London. So, Charlie, what do we know? What do we don't know or not know at this point?
Yeah, Kelly, so we just got that confirmation from U.S. officials who tell us that an F-15 fighter jet did come down over Iranian airspace and a search and rescue operation is underway. A combat search and rescue is what they call it. Iranian state broadcaster aired footage.
The Americans, they did some brave shit. They went to Iran airspace to try to get the two Americans. They haven't been able to get them. And some of them were killed too. They're going to have to report that. Iran did already put the word out to everybody. It's a bounty on these people. Capture them alive. They want them alive. Capture them alive. The U.S. will never be able to get these pilots. These pilots will be captured. They already probably captured, but they're going to be shown later on today.
What they said was wreckage of a downed jet, and that wreckage was found in central Iran. In fact, one of the images appears to show an ejection seat. So the F-15 Strike Eagle fighter jet can be a one-seater or a two-seater variant.
It's not an F-15. It's an F-35. They're doing it on purpose. They purposely sent F-15. No, F-35. Your most advanced airplane is supposed to be stealth. See, even this is misinformation. Not an F-15, a F-35.
So the number of crew involved is still unclear. A statement on Iranian television urging residents to join the hunt for the pilot or pilots, offering a bounty for any U.S. service members dead or alive. And there are reports from the Iranians, again, that there are heavy clashes underway between the Iranian military on the ground and the search and rescue attempts and teams, which obviously have to be conducted at low level, which of course puts U.S. service members at risk and within reach. Again, we're still awaiting the details about the status of the pilot or pilots, but it calls into question claims from U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and others that the United States and Israeli forces, for that matter, have achieved air superiority. In fact, moments ago, we just learned that the governor of that southwest province says whoever captures or kills the crew of that downed jet will be specially commended by the government.
Yeah, this certainly does change the situation here. I mean, based on what you've seen so far with throughout this war, I mean, how does this change the negotiations that may happen between Iran and the U.S.? I mean, it feels like a very different playing field than it was a couple of hours ago.
Lady, there are no negotiations. Trump lied to you, ma'am. Wake up. Stop lying to Americans. There are no negotiations. You're getting your ass kicked. There are no negotiations.
Kelly, it goes down to air superiority. So it was actually a couple of weeks ago, I was in the region reporting it, that the United States and the Israelis said that they had essentially knocked out all of Iran's air defenses, meaning that they could not reach any of the fighter jets that were on these bombing missions. And we're talking about thousands of bombing missions with F-15 fighter jets alleged to have gone down, F-35 stealth fighter jets, F-22s that have been engaged in fighting and targeting these areas. And they said they've essentially been able to fly with impunity over these areas. Where this changes the playing field dramatically is the fact that, well, if this is what it appears to be, and that is that a U.S. fighter jet was shot down not just crashed, but shot down over Iran, then it shows that they continue to maintain a reach. And I can tell you from my own experience from just reporting there, it was also claimed that the Iranians had lost 90% of their missile launch capabilities, and those are related. But the Iranians have continued to launch missiles, some of those longer range missiles, both into Israel and U.S. targets, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, again, those targeting areas in that region, in the Gulf, even today. So there seems to be an overestimation of what the United States and Israel has been able to do to decimate.
Not overestimation. You've been lying to the people, and Iran is exposing your ass. No, you can't fly over Iran and see invisible planes without getting them shot down. No, you will not be able to invade Iran without them capturing our troops and killing a bunch of them. This is humiliation on a whole nother level, bro.
Iran's air defenses, but we're going to have to find out more details about their capabilities at the moment.
All right, Charlie, appreciate that. I want to bring in CBS News national security analyst Aaron McClain. He's a U.S. Marine veteran and a former foreign policy advisor on Capitol Hill, so the perfect person to have with me in this situation. So I want to start with what this fighter jet would have been doing in the region.
Well, you've heard the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, talk recently about how the military is able to move to dynamic targeting over Iran. That is to say, we have aircraft in the airspace conducting missions over Iran, but then they get retasked. They hear there's a missile launcher over here. You go fly over here and bomb it. And what that suggests is we are operating in a situation where we think we have air superiority, and our aircraft can essentially loiter over Iran and go find and prosecute new targets. Obviously, the longer you loiter, the more risk you have. It's possible here that
it's possible y'all ass been getting baited in. I said that on my live. Russia. This is a military tactic. Iran is not going to shoot every plane down. They're not going to let y'all know where air defense is at. They're going to let y'all come into their country. Then they're going to do this to you, give you a sense of security that you don't have. Now, today, the humiliation is all over their face. They don't know what the fuck is going on in Iran. They have no idea what Iran is capable of. That's not a good thing.
States military may have missed one of Iran's higher-end air defense systems, or perhaps the Iranians were concealing it. And
they may have missed one. It's only one left, y'all. This dude still don't get it. No, you didn't miss it. You didn't even know where it was at. You don't know what Iran got, and it does. But what you're still not talking about is they shot down the F-35. That's supposed to be invisible. How did they see it? How did they see the F-35? How they lock it onto our most advanced airplanes? That's what they should be talking about, but he don't want to do that.
It for later in the campaign. It's also possible, essentially, that a lower quality system just got a lucky shot as this aircraft went by.
Well, because this is in broad daylight too. So a
lucky shot, y'all. A lesser air defense system just got a lucky shot on the most advanced one of the most advanced airplanes in the world. I mean, these people, they just will say anything.
The lucky shot narrative could be more possible.
Well, in the search and rescue mission, I mean, there's astonishing images, we've seen in some proliferating across social media of Air Force C-130s, Black Hawk helicopters, variants thereof, operating low and pretty slow.
What y'all got to understand is, I'm glad you said that, these pilots is what they're looking for. They want these pilots more than anything because you, the motherfuckers who killing those schoolgirls, you are the bastards who killing all the innocent people. These pilots are in serious trouble. They're not going to torture them because these real serious individuals. They're not going to torture them, but they asses are serious. They might be given the death penalty. Shit, you a pilot? You a captured pilot, and they looking for pilots who killed 100 and some schoolgirls? You in trouble.
In broad daylight over Iran, looking for this downed aircrew. It's the kind of thing you would only do in a situation where you were willing to assume extraordinary risk because your objective was so important, namely saving some lives here.
And perhaps felt very confident that you did have that air superiority. We know that a search and rescue mission, is underway. What would something like that look like? I mean, this is hostile territory, obviously, that we're dealing with.
So there's a whole community of the United States military and of our Special Operations Command that doesn't get as much press as like the Navy SEALs and the Delta Force and guys like that. There's an Air Force Special Operations Command and a pararescue unit within that is.
Bro, fuck all that movie shit. This is real life. I've already seen U.S. They did try to go into Iran. They didn't just, when them pilots went down, nigga, they tucked their nuts and went in there. They are getting killed. Helicopters getting shot. It's already U.S. troops done died trying to save those two pilots. That's what they're gonna have to tell the people. They tried that movie shit. It didn't work. Iran not playing with y'all. Y'all not going to rescue nobody in Iran. Them people going to get captured too.
Dedicated to these kinds of missions. Those guys have been in the region, essentially staged and waiting for something like this. This is not to be flippant about it, but this is game day for them. I mean, it's obviously a tragedy if one of these crew members is hurt or, God forbid, dead, but they are out there doing the mission for which they've been trained year after year, and in an extremely hazardous situation where it's daylight, they're visible. Obviously, one of the ironies of an operation like this is you assume a lot of risk to go and rescue other people who've already been shot down.
And just give us the historical context. When is the last time that we have seen something like this happen, where a U.S. fighter jet is down in hostile territory and we have to go in and rescue?
You know, the truth is there's actually not been much over the recent decades, which speaks to sort of American military dominance and the kind of campaigns that we've waged. There was a jet that went down.
You haven't been fighting anybody. That's the point. No, you ain't fighting nobody. Your plane can't get shot down. You've been bullying people. Now you're actually fighting an opponent, and it's going bad for them, horrible for them. Every day.
Syria, in the last decade, we lost a number of helicopters in Iraq and Afghanistan, but you really have to go back to the 90s to see a high rate of this kind of thing. The first Gulf War, for example, there were a number of aircraft shot down, similar, fewer, but still a few shot down over the former Yugoslavia in the late 90s. We are not particularly used to operating in an environment where there's heavily contested airspace. Obviously, here in Iran, we're encountering that here about, 5 weeks into the campaign. It's a very serious consideration.
All right, Aaron McLean, appreciate your context and analysis. I want to bring in Elizabeth Palmer, who's in Tel Aviv this morning. Liz, can you sort of paint the picture of what we're hearing from Iranian state media?
Reading the tea leaves a little bit because they haven't confirmed.
Imagine them telling you, imagine these people telling you, could you tell us what we're hearing from Iranian state television? Why don't you play Iranian state television? Hell no, they're not finna let y'all hear exactly what the Iranians are saying, because to humiliate them. So they'll describe a little bit of what the Iranians are saying. Disgusting.
Where this jet went down, but it does appear to be in Khuzestan province, which is right at the head of the Persian Gulf, very close to Karg Island, the great oil terminal that President Trump has threatened to take.
That's bad news.
Now, the governor has said that if somebody does find the pilot, who is assumed to be out there somewhere, there will be a reward of $50,000, which is a great deal of money in Iran.
And $50,000 is $1 million. Everybody named Mama it's Easter. It's the Easter egg hunt. It's $1 million. You put millions of dollars on their leaders. Now they didn't put that on the pilots, but they said do not kill them. I don't want these people to be dead. They said capture them alive.
If they do get the pilot, the Iranian playbook is sort of to put him on television. So if they do seize him, I expect that we'll see him fairly quickly on television. That's a sort of a very valuable.
She say if they do capture the pilot, the Iranian playbook is to put them on television. You damn right. You capture Maduro and put him on television. Do you see how that go?
If you like, prize of war to parade in front of the U.S. and its allies.
See, they trying to get y'all ready for what y'all finna see later on today. Y'all are finna see U.S. pilots captured in Iran. Now, I don't know if both of them. I don't know if one of them alive, but there's 2 people in this crew. One of them was flying it. One of them is a weapons specialist.
We're waiting to hear confirmation now from the Iranians. At the moment, there's just a lot of chatter and excitement and this sort of general directive to people to go out and see if they can find what's assumed to be the missing pilot.
Yeah, the image that you have now put in my mind, Liz, of an American potentially on Iranian television, that certainly would change the narrative. Appreciate your time. It's a perfect segue to bring in Weijia Jiang at the White House, because, of course, Weijia, the narrative from the White House has been that Iranians' capabilities are decimated. We heard the president earlier this week in a primetime address.
I told y'all, bro.
What are you hearing?
I told y'all they got to ask Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Trump, all these people under oath what the Iranian capabilities is. Have them purge themselves. All that 90%, just they don't have no more weapons. Say that shit under oath, bro. They not gonna do it. And now even the U.S., even the media finally got to call them out because it's costing us lives. Trump is lying. He just said in the broadcast that Iran couldn't even defend themselves. No. A reporter asked him that Iran said they're gonna be blowing up all of our financial centers in the Gulf. Trump said, blow up or what? What do they have to shoot with? And the whole room just sat there scared to say, Mr. President, they have weapons.
From the White House, if anything.
Kelly, at this hour, we are hearing nothing from the White House or President Trump, despite multiple requests, multiple texts, emails for comment. Nothing so far. But you're right that it was just 2 nights ago that the president addressed the nation and said that Iran had essentially been eviscerated and that it is no longer a threat. The president said, quote, we've done all of it. Their Navy is gone. Their Air Force is gone. Their missiles are just about used up or beaten, taken together. So the president was really projecting that the U.S. was able to take out all of Iran's capabilities in terms of those things, but clearly that is not the case. So we are waiting to hear how this changes the calculation, Kelly, for how to proceed next and for whether this alters the president's plan for staying in Iran, for withdrawing, because clearly this is an escalation.
All right, we just appreciate it. I just want to bring in Aaron McLean one last time. You know, we just
clearly this is an escalation. Yeah, Iran shooting your ass out the sky. You mad?
Just saying that this could change things. In your mind, where could we go next? Because this certainly has changed the trajectory of this war.
Well, the Iranians are hostage takers by nature. It goes back to the origin of their very regime in 1979 and 1980. Our pilots are trained, you know, assuming, and we're all praying that they got onto the ground alive and able to move.
Hostage takers. Now they want to make us see like they came to America and kidnapped some people and hostage. Your pilot is killing their kids and their grandkids and the elderly people. You're the bad guys, bro.
They're trained to evade, and they are trained, if captured, to act in captivity in a way that does credit to their nation. So we're praying for them, and we will have to see how the strategic calculus shifts, if at all. This is militarily not... it's the kind of thing you would expect to happen. If you fly these sorts of missions over Iran long enough, eventually you're going to lose something. Politically, we'll have to see how the administration responds.
And just quickly, last question. This could certainly change negotiations if you do have an American hostage on Iranian television. Does that change the Strait of Hormuz in terms of how this all comes together?
Well, it certainly... If the pilot has been captured or the crew have been captured and are in Iranian custody, this is another element of leverage for Iran. They've got the strait closed. That's their main aspect of leverage. But if they have the crew too, that's another point in their column.
All right, Aaron McLean, appreciate your time today.
Yeah.
All right, just to recap, 2 sources confirmed.
Stop flying your plane. You stupid. Believe in President Trump. Believe in Trump that the Iranians don't have any missiles anymore. No air defense. He said that. They don't have air defense. Well, then why the fuck are your F-35 shot down and 2 of your pilots hiding in the bushes right now? They captured. Iran probably already got them.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We are coming on the air with breaking news. A U.S. official confirms to ABC News that it appears a U.S. fighter jet has been shot down by Iran. Now a search and rescue operations underway. Let's get to our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz. Martha, what do we know so far?
Well, Diane, what we do know is this was a 2-seater aircraft. The pilot would be in front, the weapons systems officer would be in back. And this would be a very dramatic and very dangerous rescue. Iran's Revolutionary Guard saying that Iranian forces had shot down the U.S. fighter overnight, with Iranian state media releasing images of the wreckage of a jet and of an intact ejection seat. The IRGC said it was an F-35. But from the images that we do believe are credible but have not independently verified, it looks like an Air Force F-15. Now, U.S. pilots are trained in what is called SEER if they are shot down or have to eject over enemy territory. SEER stands for Survive, Evade, Resist, and Escape. The pilots, the navigator, of course, know that Iranians would be looking for them. In fact, Iran put out a message to shoot the pilots if they were found, and a reward was being offered. Later, they said if they are found alive. This comes after President Trump claimed in his speech on Wednesday night that the Iranians have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated. The president saying we are unstoppable as a military force. But again, this is a very, very dangerous mission. Diane.
The story began when Iranian state-linked outlets, including Tasnim News, has Iran just captured a US F-35 pilot? A single image posted online is now fueling one of the biggest claims of the war so far. If true, this could be a major loss for the United States. But if not, it could be something else entirely. Let's break it down. The story began when Iranian state-linked outlets, including Tasnim News, reported that a US F-35 stealth fighter had been shot down over central Iran. This isn't just any aircraft. The F-35 is one of the most advanced, stealth-capable fighter jets in the world. So naturally, the claim grabbed global attention instantly. Soon after, a post on X, amplified by major accounts, pushed the narrative even further. US F-35 pilot possibly captured by Iran. And attached to it was a photo, an image allegedly from an IRGC-linked account showing what appears to be a fighter jet ejection seat lying in desert terrain. The image shows a metallic ejection seat, visible harness straps, parachute remnants, and survival kit components. Even the shadow of the photographer can be seen. To many, this looked like real evidence. But here's the catch. The original caption posted in Persian was vague and cryptic. It didn't clearly mention an F-35, a crash, or a captured pilot. Instead, it made sarcastic references to US military narratives, leaving everything open to interpretation. Despite that ambiguity, pro-Iranian outlets quickly connected the dots. They claimed the pilot had ejected, survived, and was possibly captured on Iranian soil. Some reports even suggested this could be the second F-35 loss in recent weeks, escalating concerns even further. But almost immediately, doubts started to emerge. Open-source intelligence analysts began pointing out something critical. The debris being circulated online may not belong to an F-35 at all. Instead, it could be from an F-15E Strike Eagle, a completely different two-seat aircraft. Some components in the images reportedly match F-15E hardware more closely than F-35 systems. Adding to the mystery, reports surfaced of U.S. search and rescue aircraft, specifically HC-130J planes flying in the region. This has fueled speculation that a pilot may have ejected and a rescue mission could be underway, but again, nothing officially confirmed. As of now, the most important detail is this. There has been no confirmation from the United States, no Pentagon statement, no CENTCOM update, no acknowledgement of a downed F-35, a missing aircraft, or a captured pilot, which leaves the situation in a gray zone. This isn't the first time such claims have surfaced. In March 2026, Iran also claimed it had hit an F-35, but US officials later stated the aircraft was damaged, the pilot survived, and the jet safely returned to base. If this claim turns out to be true, the implications are massive. This wouldn't just be a tactical loss, it would be a major symbolic victory for Iran.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update.
Friday, April 3rd, 2026. And dear friends, Carl Wilkerson and Larry Johnson are here with us. Welcome back.
Hey there. Look, I'm glad you got you broke out the power shirt today. Look at you.
And it's Good Friday.
Yeah, Good Friday.
Yeah. Let's start with the latest news about a fighter jet being shot in Iran, being down in Iran. And first, what was the reaction from the CENTCOM? They said that nothing of that sort has happened, and the footages, the pictures coming out of Iran from the mainstream media, from the Iranian media. Then we have new reports coming to CNN, to New York Times, and here is what CNN reported on that.
Media has released images that appear to show debris of a downed US fighter jet, saying the fate of the pilot is unknown. Well, Matthew Chance is in Doha, covering off some of this latest. Matthew, let's start with what we know about this downed jet in Iran. State media certainly saying it's a US F-35. We've seen the images that they've posted. What do we make of those?
Yeah, it wasn't F-35. We had initial reports that they said F-35, then they changed it to F-15E. Colonel, what is your understanding? What was that, in your opinion? What type of fighter jet was that?
Well, I couldn't tell from the photos, but I think the latest reports are manifest. New York Times, across YouTube, F-15E. And that would make, I don't know that it makes any more sense. We already had F-15 shot down by Kuwait. I was kind of expecting that we would be awakened to an B-52 being shot down because they're such lumbering colossuses. They have a lot of additional security, if you will, than they had in the old days when they bombed Vietnam to a pulp. But I was kind of thinking that would happen. F-15E is usually a pretty decent aircraft, so it must have strayed, it must have had maintenance malfunction, or it got in a place where it shouldn't have been, envelope of a particular Iranian system where it shouldn't have been. I don't know, I'm just speculating. But it's going to happen, and it's going to happen again, as long as we keep this idiotic conflict going on.
Yeah. Larry, they're trying to find the pilot. Go ahead, your take.
Well, yeah, I've got one of my readers, who's also one of your viewers, just sent me a note saying that, hey, the pilot has been captured, and I've seen the footage just before we came on of a Black Hawk was smoking out. I mean, it had been hit, and so apparently a Black Hawk has now gone down in Iran as well.
CSAR, probably.
Yeah. So now you got the nightmare for Donald Trump is beginning to unfold in its full glory, because remember, they've defeated Iran. Iran doesn't have any air defense. They've wiped out their air force. They've wiped out their navy. Iran has nothing left. And now they've shot down an F-15 and shot down a Black Hawk helicopter, and they've got a pilot. And we'll see if they also grab the crew, if there's any surviving crew from the Black Hawk. So now you're going to see, you'll get images of a U.S. pilot in Iranian hands, and it's just a reminder that Trump's narrative about the complete defeat of Iran is not working out so well.
I'm sure you're going to go into this too, Nima, but since I have abbreviated time, I make sure you're going to go into it. You've seen the reports on what has resulted from Trump's very impolitic comments about MBS. Well, we have a whole new relationship now developed in the region, a relationship between Zelensky, who is very, very quick to jump on it, and MBS. And the statements I've heard come out of the royals in Saudi Arabia indicate that this is a final relationship with regard to their succor from the United States of America. There will be no more.
Yeah. Larry, when you look at the way that I happen to know the region in which the fighter jet was shot.
What was it? What region was it?
It's in southeast of Iran.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I am from that region. I know the region. I know the people. I know well the people. They're mostly armed. They know how to use, a rifle, for example. But they don't. I know that they're so much cautious. They know, since they know well how to use arms, they know how to manage that. They're not gonna. If they capture the pilot, they're not gonna do any hurt. They're not gonna hurt him. I'm sure about that. And on the other hand, Colonel, Larry, when they send these sort of, we've seen various helicopters there.
Yeah.
And is that common? It's
Yeah.
so strange to.
Yeah, it's called CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue. This goes back a good friend of mine. He was the last colonel to command the Air Force Special Operations Wing out of Hurlburt before they made it into a one-star billet. But he flew helicopters in Vietnam and the rescue copters. And inevitably, like in Vietnam, what would happen, a pilot would get shut down and they'd send out the CSAR. And the number of times those rescue helicopters got shot down was, it was fairly numerous. You actually got more casualties out of that than you did from pilots that were, shot down. So they've had, there have been, I don't know where they're staging out of, if it's out of Qatar or Prince Saud Air Base. But, when the pilot went down, they went in to try to rescue him. And apparently, if what this one person is sharing with me, at least one of those choppers got shot down.
Yeah. Colonel Pete Hegseth, on the other hand, is firing important commanders in the middle of this war. What are they trying to do in the United States? We had reports from the Intercept that they're just somehow they're not reporting correctly on the number of casualties. The way that they're talking about, they have destroyed Iranian capabilities to fire back. CNN reported on that. What is happening under Pete Hegseth and his sort of management in Pentagon?
Well, my initial reaction to Randy George's release was that it probably was war related. And it very well may have had that as a component of it. But what I'm hearing now very strongly from friends is that he was absolutely incensed over Hegseth dipping into the Brigadier General's list and removing the 2 women, I think, and 2 black officers. And he was so incensed over it that Hegseth let him go. He really got vocal with him over it, that he shouldn't do that. He couldn't do that it was unprecedented, blah, 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 blah. And then I heard that the chief of chaplains was released because of somewhat of the war, interest about the war or opposition to the war and the way it was being conducted. But that was mostly personnel-wise too, is what Hegseth was doing to the chaplain corps. Everything from taking their rank insignia off to eliminating whole groups. And this is really strange. He's eliminating whole groups of people who can be represented by chaplains in an official way within the military. And all of these groups that he's eliminating are officially recognized by Arlington Cemetery as being able to have their symbol on their tombstone should they die and go into Arlington. This is crazy. He's flying against tradition, he's flying against protocol, and he's actually flying against regulation, but he's changing the regulations apparently. So a lot of this was personnel oriented more so than it was war, but I'm sure there was a huge component of that too. The personnel issues probably were just a straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, let me just point out what we're seeing here is I'll call it the politicization of the military, turning the military into a Praetorian Guard as opposed to the legionnaires. Within the Roman system, the legionnaires were there to fight for Rome. They fought for the nation. The Praetorian Guard was there to protect a particular politician. And In this case, and it started under, really started in earnest under Barack Obama, continued under Biden, and Trump, continuing under Trump, where you're trying to remake the leadership into partisan political supporters, and identifying people who aren't your supporters as people who must be eliminated. I mean, it's very, very dangerous, because this is just crossing a line that is it's gonna destroy the military, I believe.
You remember my saying, Neiman, I agree, 100% with Larry, and I would even go further. You remember my saying earlier that the January 6th coup didn't fail because the system fell. It fell because the coup plotters were incompetent. And one of the major aspects of their incompetence, if not the chief major factor, is the fact they didn't have the military on their side. Milley chose to stand aside. Not only chose to stand aside, but afterwards made very clear to the military why he stood aside and why he thought he was right, and was resoundingly welcomed in the military, particularly in the middle ranks. So I think they're shaping, and I think Larry's right about this, I think they're shaping this Praetorian Guard much more so than any previous administration, because they're shaping it to make sure that the Trump legacy, in whatever form, fashion, the MAGA legacy, whatever, is protected, even to the point that if they have to take over the Republic in some violent way, they will have the majority of the military on their side. And what they're doing right now is setting up a two-part military. So you would look for a battle within the military ranks before there would be any succumbing to a civilian order to more or less suppress a rebellion in the United States, or implement the Insurrection Act, or God forbid, go far beyond that even. I think they're prepping for this. And I said to one person this morning, I thought Hegseth would go, and I said he would probably be the first one to go. Bondi's gone, Noam's gone. I think a couple of others are short-lived. Hegseth is here, and I understand why he's here now, because he's crafting the instrument of Trump's legacy in retention of power. Can't let that go. Can't let nobody else is going to take that over probably and move in the direction and with the speed that Hegseth has moved.
It seems that Cash Patel, they're talking about Cash Patel as well.
Yeah.
The whole system is somehow shaking, Larry. Is that because of the war? Is that because of something beyond that?
Yeah,
well, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No,
you're on a short leash anyway.
Larry,
I took Larry to mean I'm getting shell shocked.
Oh, okay. This is my understanding, without revealing the source, is that Susie Wiles is alarmed now, finally, by the polling. They're getting killed in the polls. They recognize that the Republicans, if this continues, as I believe it will, Republicans just get wiped out, which will then put Trump, make it impossible for Trump to accomplish anything in his remaining 2 years in office, if he survives those remaining 2 years. That gets us off into a whole nother discussion about, if I was counseling the Democrats, I would come in and say, hey, leave Trump alone. Do not impeach. Let him continue to be the face of the Republican Party, because the longer he's out there, the more people are going to dislike him. Because the last thing we want to do is impeach him, remove him from office, and then have J.D. Vance come in, because J.D. Vance might actually have enough common sense to play the politics of it right, that he could take what would be a sure win for the Democrats and upset that apple cart. Trump, they're doing a shakeup, because it's, Bondi's. There are problems on the military side, so we got to separate that out. Of Tulsi Gabbard, I think she'll be blamed for the intelligence failure. that she didn't properly inform Trump about the dangers of going into Iran. Oh my God, talk about karma. And then Daniel Driscoll, he's the Secretary of the Army. He's actually, he seems pretty squared away. And my understanding is he is just beside himself over what Trump is doing with the Army and putting them into this kind of jeopardy. You got that, but then on the other hand, you got Kash Patel. They recognize he's a liability. I mean, good God, I never thought he would be this bad, and he's just awful. Yeah. And then this Secretary of Labor, Latina lady, she apparently is, she's got a liquor cabinet in her office and is notorious for chasing young guys around. So she's a bit of a sexual harasser, reportedly. So, you know, they're going to offload some of them. Trump's administration, they're trying to recalibrate because the midterms are upon them. It's not good. By the way, I keep getting there's one of your watchers, one of your viewers is in Iran, and is forwarding me this information as we're talking. You know, got pictures of the Black Hawk on fire going down. He said the Black Hawks were flying over a place called Dalam. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, Dalam is in the southern part of Iran, close to the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where all this activity is taking place. So this, you know, this is going to, you talk about political pressure on Trump. This is going to amp it up substantially, particularly if the Iranians, you know, if they do capture the pilots, and they're alive, and then to, you know, put them on television. Then because boy, the mainstream media won't be able to leave that one alone. They'll be all over that, and so, you know, this was before your time. But Colonel Wilkerson and I remember what happened when the Americans were taken hostage at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and Ted Koppel's career was born at that point. You know, day one, day two, day three, Nightline. You know.
I remember Mogadishu too. That wasn't very
yeah.
copacetic for us.
Yeah. Carl, looking at what Donald Trump said yesterday, in your opinion, what was the main objective? What was the main point in his address to the nation?
Well, I thought that maybe he was going to do what we had all recommended, that is, declare victory and leave. He started out sort of trying to do that, I think, but then he got his, you know, as usual, he got his lips mixed up, and he did as usual, which was to say nothing, really, not to express a real mission, not to express a real goal, not to express anything about what the Iranians have very categorically said about what they would do to negotiate, not addressing any of that. And I think, just to back up for a second, I think it was at Mar-a-Lago when he said what he said about MBS, which was probably as bad a set of remarks as he's put together, and that's really saying something in this presidency, where he essentially said that MBS kissed his ass. And MBS has said nothing back in derisive nature. But that changed, I think, the entire nature of our relationship with the principal power in Southwest Asia other than Iran. And now they are making deals with Pakistan. They're making deals with Jelani in Syria. They've shifted their entire idea of they're not going to send that pipeline up through Israel. That's dead in the water. They're now making deals with Jelani and others in the different direction, if you will, to bring the pipeline up through there, which is a very important endeavor for Saudi Arabia with lots of money behind it. So Trump has made so many enemies in the world now. And look what Zelensky has just done. He has just refurbished his own position in Ukraine. Despite what the Russians might do, he has, in fact, refurbished his position, both with the world arms market and with the critical part of the world where the biggest war is going on right now, courtesy of the empire, and where Europe is increasingly disenchanted with that empire and making its own rules and making its own way in the world finally. So we're watching the whole situation change much faster than I thought it was going to. And it's being compelled to a certain extent, not just by Iran, that's a huge factor, but by Trump, all by himself and his administration. They're forcing this change to come on much more rapidly and therefore much more dangerously than it should have come on. And we're going to see that in huge proportion if he keeps up this business of not knowing what he's doing or saying what he's doing. And he allows Iran to move on to the second tier of targets that are substantially more dangerous to the global economy than that first tier. And if they hit them with the same devastating accuracy.
Contact Roberts Air for all your heating and cooling needs.
Take the thing they just did in Saudi Arabia that belonged to Amazon. That's what the kind of target I'm talking about. That was probably on the second tier of target list, and that's what's going to happen all around the region. This is going to be no respect for anybody's world capability or world hookup, and just total destruction. And if that happens, Iran's sitting there on a strait that's going to make it lots of money, continue to make it lots of money, and the rest of the world is hurting on so many different ways, in so many different ways, and on so many different issues. This could go global really quickly. It could go global really quickly.
Well, and let me just point out that an oddity about Trump, two oddities about Trump's speech. This is the first time I recall him sticking to a script and not deviating from it. I mean, he read that script and didn't do ad-libbing at all, or hardly at all. It was, is in contrast to what he normally does. The other thing was just his voice intonation and how he looked. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of Dustin Hoffman from the movie Rain Man. He was just this monotone voice throughout, without any kind of inflection or emotion, or very, very strange. So I took that as further sign that the concerns, the worries about what they're getting into here in Iran is starting to build up. And so right now in Iran it's 7 p.m., almost 7 p.m. And if we're going to do anything militarily this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised to see it start within the next 3 to 4 hours. It's Donald Trump's trying to recreate Dien Bien Phu or Gallipoli, one of the two.
Yeah. I would predict that if we do start something, it's going to look like that Caesar Black Hawk.
Yeah.
Because right now we were talking about 1 or 2 pilots, then there are going to be a lot. And I don't know how Donald Trump would, and what could, Larry, is it going to be just the United States, in your opinion, if they go, or you're going to see other forces coming?
Yeah, no, they're not going to have any other NATO forces. I've been following on open source. There's this the X account called the Intel Frog. I don't know where they're getting the flight information, but they've been tracking since March 12th, because there was a surge starting March 12th of C-17s that were flying to these various, basically five different airfields. Joint Base Lewis McChord up in Washington, Hunter Army Airfield in Georgia, Pope Army Airfield at Fort Bragg, right next to JSOC headquarters, Oceana Naval Air Station, and basically Little Creek, Virginia, and then Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Now, there have been a total of 74 flights. Each C-17 can carry 102 paratroopers, or 102 soldiers with who are carrying a combat load. That means you got their packs and their weapons, etc. So, if you've got 74 planes with at 102, what you're looking at is, at least from the special operations community, potential deployment of around 7,500 soldiers. Yeah, I don't see any Marines in that group. So these are all Army. They, the number of trips out of Bragg, there have been 12 out of Pope Army Airfield. So that means you basically could deploy one battalion of the 82nd Airborne. Then that would leave the 2 or 3 squadrons out of Delta Force could possibly have been deployed. But my point in all this is they've been talking about 50,000 troops. No, they don't have that many. If the flights out of both Hunter Army Airfield and Joint Base Lewis McChord, those are 75th Ranger regiments, and so the 1st Battalion is, I think, at Hunter, and the 2nd Battalion is at Lewis McChord, maybe the other way around. But
no, you're right.
So you've got the Ranger regiments there. They're capable of jumping in, and they're designed to operate with the Tier 1 force, Delta Force, or SEAL Team 6. So I think they're going to do something crazy. You don't deploy those folks overseas just for show. You either, when they do that kind of deployment, it's either for an exercise, and this clearly is not an exercise, or it means they're going to actually put them in some sort of kinetic activity.
Yeah, I've even heard, Nima, that there was a aspect of it that was involving carrying the enriched uranium out, or some other nonsense thing like that. And someone sat down and did the weight factors. Good luck carrying that.
Yeah, and I think the only they could potentially, one target could be Bushehr, which is close to the coast, or if not on the coast. They could use that as a target to go in and take control of whatever nuclear fuel is there. I mean, it's ridiculous because the Russians have been working there with the Iranians, and it is a peaceful. It's not a military target, but the problem they face for the special operations forces is, if you try to go after any of the other nuclear sites that are in the interior of Iran, they don't have the legs with the helicopters to get there, without having put a forward fuel, basically a refueling station. You fly airplanes in, you dump off a bunch of fuel bladders, and then the helicopters would come in and refuel, be able to get to the target. I mean, that's just way too complicated. And Iran, we did that, good God, 46 years ago, when they tried to mount the rescue the hostages in Tehran. But Iran's come a long way in 46 years.
Yeah. Just one final comment from me before I take off. We are proving once again, and we're proving it in spades, that, as Foreign Minister Arachi said to Al Jazeera English, you cannot bomb a people into submission. No matter how many bombs you drop, no matter how accurate they are, no matter how many planes you have flying, you cannot do anything by bombing their schools, their mosques, their facilities for food, their facilities for water, on and on and on, all of which are war crimes, of course. You cannot convince them to do anything but to oppose you with the resolution of every bone in their body. And that's what we've done. Listening to Arachi, that's what he was saying. That's what he was saying. I mean, he laid it down. Ceasefire, cessation of hostile attitude, and reparations. That's my negotiation. And it'll just get rougher as time goes by. We're in a mess. We're in a total mess.
Carl, they don't want negotiate because they assassinated Kamal Kharazi in Iran together with his wife.
And he also said a couple of times, why would we want to negotiate with these lying sacks of, I'm making this up, I'm paraphrasing, and he just declared that there'd been no negotiations, making Witkoff's cabinet appearance an absolute lie. There are no negotiations. No Iranian has talked to an American, and vice versa.
Yeah,
they're talking through third parties or even fourth parties. And I believe him. Anyway, I got to run. Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Hey, have a good day, Colonel.
Thank
have
you.
a good day.
Over to you.
See you soon. Yeah. Larry, I think we may mention what is happening, with the new reports on CNN. They're talking about even it seems that 1/3 of the Iran's capabilities were destroyed by the United States so far. This is the report. From what I'm hearing from Iran is totally different, but at least we have this report on CNN. But what is your assessment? What is your understanding so far? And what are the evidences that they're saying that they get this information from the intelligence? Is the same intelligence that is provided to the United States president?
Yes. Well, let's go back. Before this started, we did have reports that General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as well as Tulsi Gabbard and Joe Kent and the intelligence community basically were telling President Trump that there wasn't the chances of success were not good, that there were a lot of obstacles for this proposed attack, and that there wasn't an imminent threat. So he ignored all that. This thing gets to the question of what did the CIA analysts and the Defense Intelligence Agency analysts, those would be the two principal ones on the military that do military order of battle. What did they actually know about Iran's supply of ballistic missiles and the inventory? Well, the early reports we had showed that they really had no idea what they were talking about, because the analysis was that Iran had only like 33,000 missiles. Well, they burned through all that in about 2 weeks, and have kept firing ever since. And so now you've seen that the intelligence community came back with this number like, okay, we've only destroyed 1/3. Iran must have 70% more. I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, I'm just guessing. I estimated their inventory to be something around like 20,000, and basing that in part on just looking at these videos that are online showing all these missiles stored underground, mile after mile after mile. It is the intelligence community has limitations. There's only so much you can do with technical collection, like overhead imagery, intercepts of conversations. It's always, what you really, this is why CIA was originally created back in 1947, to actually get human beings that will give you information that normally would not be available to the public. That you would actually have somebody who was working in the production facility. But right now, and even the Israelis, as good as intelligence as they have in some aspects, they got real limitations too, and they have it properly. Like we see with Hezbollah, they were capable of penetrating Hezbollah leadership. They sort of knew where they were going to be meeting, so they could kill them. They were able to get into the production cycle with the phones and the pagers. But if they didn't understand what the actual military capability of Hezbollah is, not just was, but is. And so they then launched this ground operation into southern Lebanon. And frankly, they're getting their ass kicked. Hezbollah is, despite being supposedly destroyed and weakened, is just tearing them to bits. The casualty rate, which the Israelis are desperately trying to cover up, is just through the roof. When there are four, every Merkava tank has a crew of four, and so when you destroy over 100 tanks, that's a potential casualty of at least 400 just there. So I think Israel has, they've made some mistakes and they've got limited information in certain critical areas, and yet they've confidently, told Trump, "Oh yeah, there's no popular support for the Islamic Republic, and if we just get rid of the Ayatollah Khamenei, the rest of the country will rise up and overthrow the Islamic Republic." No, turned out not to be true.
Yeah. Larry, the new post of Donald Trump, he says, with a little more time, we can easily open the Strait of Hormuz, take the oil, and make a fortune. It would be a gusher for the world. That's
just crazy.
It seems that he's going to continue this war until he's done with his presidency. I don't see because the way that he's talking about a little more, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then go after.
Well, he is, if he follows through, I know it is understood that this attack, the attempt to take and hold ground in Iran, is going to happen this weekend. Whether it starts tonight, Iran time, or tomorrow, Saturday, or early Saturday, Iran time, remains to be seen. But if he does that, then that will really be, I'll call it, the beginning of the end of his presidency. Because the U.S. is going to suffer casualties, and like right now, I'm seeing the report coming over saying that the pilot of the F-15 is dead. And if the Black Hawk, it's not clear if the Black Hawk pilots, there are at least two, and they have probably at least one other crewman, maybe two in there. If they're all dead, and then it's going to put Iran in really an interesting position. They will present the bodies. They're going to force the United States to come pick up the bodies, and recognizing that's going to force the United States to acknowledge that they've got more dead military personnel than what they've let on. So Trump's caught because there is no, he says that we can blow open the Strait of Hormuz. No, you can't. As long as Iran retains the ability to launch drones and or missiles at ships in the strait will not be open. Just that threat alone, the fact that it can be done, will prevent countries from the insurance company from Lloyd's from insuring ships. So with no insurance, those ships don't go in and out. Now, that said, we're getting reports today as well that so far they've allowed tankers going to China and Pakistan, I believe, to come out of the Strait of Hormuz and go on with their journey. But now it looks like, again, I got a notification that a French tanker and a Japanese tanker have gone through as well. And that means the French and the Japanese, they're paying Chinese in yuan. They're not paying in dollars. And those, even if those, those tankers are out now, well, good grief, it's going to be a while, but 3-4 weeks before those tankers reach shore. Yeah, I just got it looks like the pilot was rescued. So the U.S. did rescue the pilot. The F-15 went down. That pilot was rescued. So.
Yeah. Larry, it's not just about, Japan and France. We've seen two of these Arab states in the Persian Gulf calling Iran and trying to find some sort of solution for what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know who they are. It seems, in my opinion, it could be Qatar or some other countries, maybe Kuwait or Bahrain, or I don't know, Saudi Arabia could be part of that. But after all, they're getting to the point to understand if they want to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they have to talk with Iran, because the United States is not going to be there. As Donald Trump himself mentioned it yesterday, they're not going to help them.
Well, yeah, of course. I think Iran is playing this thing pretty smart. The number one, they're negotiating with Oman about, hey, let's work together on this. Let's agree upon the fees that we're going to charge per ship to pass through the Persian Gulf. They're going to be like the bouncer at the door of a disco. People want to get inside, you got to pay a cover charge. Yeah, you got to pay a cover charge. You want to come to the Persian Gulf, pay a cover charge, and they'll split it because, as you know, the very western tip of Oman sits opposite Iran right there. So it's natural that they would be partners in this. Then once, countries that need to get oil out, they'll be coming out probably with Iranian oil for now. Iran will be negotiating, give at least the Saudis and the Kuwaitis and the Qataris and the folks from Bahrain a chance to negotiate with Iran, because Iran's deal is going to be this: hey, divorce yourself from the United States, work with us, and whatever you want to export, you can export. There's going to be a fee. It's going to help us rebuild the damage that has been done to Iran by Israel and the United States. I think Saudi Arabia is ultimately going to make a deal. Qatar already is making that deal. The one that won't and will be gone is Bahrain and Kuwait. I think Kuwait is going to be taken over by Iraq. They'll be reincorporated into Iraq anyway. And United Arab Emirates, I mean, it's been a fake creation from the beginning. I mean, it was just, what was it, 1971, 72, that the Brits said, okay, meet the new country, United Arab Emirates, welcome. It's a colonial creation, nothing more. It has no indigenous population that, would be singing about how proud they are to be Emiratis. So Iran's in a pretty interesting, strong position now to negotiate.
Israeli media reported that one of the main, one of the biggest manufacturers of drones was hit by Iranian missile. Mm-hmm. And we know that mostly the arm production in Israel is on the ground, on the surface. They're not, the way that Iran is doing. Do you think, Larry, if the war continues, because we know that Israelis are somehow telling the United States to continue with the war, and what is the assessment on their part, and how is that going to be beneficial for Israel if the war continues?
Well, yeah, if the United States pulls out and stops supplying Israel,
As a small business owner, you need a tax service that lets you focus on your business.
Israel overplayed its hand. When Bibi Netanyahu shut down the Church of the Holy Sepulchre last Sunday for Palm Sunday, that has started to ignite a firestorm among, particularly among the Catholics, that here is Israel attacking Christians, which shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, these crazed Zionists, that's what they do. They hate Christians. They like to pretend that it is Islam that's anti-Christian, and you have to keep reminding people that, Muslims, whether you're Sunni or Shia, they venerate Jesus as a prophet. The Jews don't. They don't see Jesus as a prophet. They have no respect for Jesus whatsoever. Similarly, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is venerated as a holy woman within Islam, not within Judaism. In fact, in some portions of the I won't call it Jewish scripture, but she's described as a whore. Not exactly a sign of respect. So Israel is so overstretched right now militarily that, if it can try to, without a supply of bombs coming from the United States, it can't keep up the level of strikes against both Syria, Lebanon, and Iran. And then it's getting bogged down again in southern Lebanon with the attacks as Hezbollah is retaliating against the Israeli invasion. So Israel can do a lot of encouragement trying to keep the war going, but it can't do it on its own.
Larry, do you feel that there would be some sort of division in the Persian Gulf, or if they decide to go after some sort of security architecture for the region, they're all going to be, united? We know what has happened, for example, in Yemen. We had some sort of difference between UAE and Saudi Arabia. And UAE is not a country to, sustain these sort of conflicts. That's why they backed down, if you remember,
right,
against Saudi Arabia. And is there something of that sort happening in the mind of these leaders? Because after all, they want to survive. They don't want to be destroyed. They want to survive and keep up with whatever they have in their own countries, as though the people are not happy, but they want to be in the same position. They want to be in power.
Yeah, I don't think the UAE or Bahrain will survive. I think they'll be I guess folded into. I see UAE probably going back to Oman. Remember, it was an artificial creation by the Brits back in 71, 72. So that'll be greater Oman. I don't see the glory, what Dubai and Abu Dhabi have been as far as these major cities that have attracted a lot of foreigners. Right now, those foreigners they've been bailing out of the country. They're getting out if they can. And all the horrors that were there, imported from Europe and from Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, they've gone back home. You're not. It's not the party city that it once was. It's going to be interesting to see what Saudi Arabia does. They've had a mixed relationship with Iran. Initially, MBS was very anti-Iranian, and then thanks to the intervention of the Chinese and the Russians, MBS sort of they reconciled or came on more cordial terms with Iran. But now, with the start of the war on February 28th, despite them claiming that, we're not going to be involved, They absolutely were involved. They facilitated the attacks on Iran by allowing U.S. Planes to operate from Saudi Arabian territory. So now, as you pointed out, with Trump insulting MBS by saying, "Oh yeah, he's kissing my ass." Oh yeah, that's gonna endear MBS to Trump, and then the damage that they're suffering. They may finally, the Iranians could offer them a deal, and they'll take the deal. So, what I think the outcome of this war right now is going to be a complete restructuring of the politics of the Persian Gulf.
Larry, Donald Trump, the whole agenda on the part of Donald Trump was to save dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever he's done so far in terms of the war in Ukraine, and right now with a new war in the Middle East, is totally the opposite way, in going, totally against what he was talking about. And how do you see the Strait of Hormuz? Because as you and Carl mentioned, the new regime, the new mechanism in the Strait of Hormuz would be based. And is it, how do you find this going against the agenda Donald Trump had before being elected?
Well, again, he was counting on, the Saudis in particular, and I think it's the Emiratis, maybe second largest purchasers of U.S. Treasury bills. So they've counted upon the Persian Gulf as being one area where they would help finance U.S. debt. They would be buying up U.S. Treasuries. Well, that's sort of come to a screeching halt in the course of the last 5 weeks. If the Saudis need money, I mean, they're not they don't have a big savings account sitting there at some bank, so they've got to generate some cash. And one of the way you generate cash, you just start selling your T-bills, which I think they're doing. And as you correctly note, China is taking advantage of this whole situation by, reminding these countries, if you hold T-bills, you give the United States some control and leverage over you. And China has been in the process of converting a lot of U.S. debt into debt fund, where the people who are buying the bonds are now buying Chinese bonds, not U.S. bonds. So I think we're at the very beginning of a complete makeover, restructuring of the international financial system. That the dollar is not going to disappear overnight or in a day or two, but it's still it's going to be significant that the Chinese are going to become an alternative player in this whole arena.
Larry, the breaking news is that the F-16 CJ it seems that it was down over the Saudi Arabia because it had an emergency landing. It was, and
there's been some either upgrade in Iranian air defense, or something's happened. There were reports that the Russians had brought in either S-400 or S-500 systems, and if those are in fact in play now, because you've seen, we've had more reports of aircraft being shot down in the last 4 days than we did in the previous 4 weeks.
Yeah. It seems that the whole case of radars and these AWACS were so much helpful to the airplanes as well, to the fighter jets as well. Right now, without that sort of information coming to the headquarters, that would be difficult for the fighter jets as well. Is that?
Well, no, I understand. So Iran took out the ground radars, and so to detect, and those radars were basically to detect launches of missiles and other aircraft in the whole AOR. What is with those, when those were taken out, because Iran destroyed 13 of them within the first 2 weeks of the war. They needed something. They needed a replacement for that, and so that's where the E3 AWACS comes in. The AWACS is really, it operates like a ground radar. It provides that radar coverage, but it's doing it from the plane. And so the destruction of that the other day created further problems for the United States, and they're bringing in another one to try to compensate. But there's still the ability of the Air Force to track other aviation threats is diminished. So, like I said, there's something's changed on the ground inside Iran, though, because of this sudden spate of, the F-16 you're reporting that had to make an emergency landing somewhere in Saudi Arabia. Reportedly, 2 F-15s shot down in the last 24 hours, one off the coast of Iran, the other one inland on Iran. There's something's happening here. To quote Buffalo Springfield, what it is ain't exactly clear.
Yeah. Larry, it seems to me that Iran didn't show, what they had in terms of using, air defense system. That's why it's somehow getting the United States by surprise. Could that be the case, that they didn't show the capabilities? So what they had it, they didn't show it because they know that somehow the United States would go with the ground invasion. Would escalate the war.
Well,
and because during the war, it's so difficult to improve the air defense system. Is that the case? Or
I am not sure what the capabilities of the Iranian system are. It appears, what we've seen, and going back to the start of the war, it was not capable of destroying Tomahawk cruise missiles. It was not capable of destroying JDAMs or JASSMs, these glide launch bombs, etc. It does appear that it can detect and shoot down F-35s, F-15s, F-16s, KC-135 tankers. Why that didn't happen earlier on probably is because those planes did not venture into Iranian airspace. Now they are. And if that reason is because the United States believes wrongly that it has defeated and eliminated Iranian air power or air defenses, they're finding out the hard way. No, Iran still does have some pretty robust capability. So, look, this war is not going to end anytime soon. The Western financiers have bet a lot of money and believed Trump initially that, this war was going to be over soon. You saw what happened to both the stock market and the oil market in the immediate aftermath of Trump's speech the other night. When he came out, I guess that was Wednesday. So when he started talking, the stock market was up, the oil market was down. And by the time he got done talking, it was going the opposite direction. The stock market was falling, predicting it was going to, and it did. It lost like 500-600 points on the Dow at the opening. And meanwhile, oil, which Brent and the West Texas WTI, West Texas Intermediate oil, had gone, it was down below $100. And right now, as we speak, where is that? Where's our oil price? I had it here a minute ago, but it looks like West Texas. Oh, there it is. So West Texas Intermediate is now up to $112. It's gone up over 11%. The Brent crude is at $108. So, Trump had the opposite effect. Previously he had been able to say things, oh, it's looking good. This is coming to an end, and oil price would drop and the stock market would rise. Now, he no longer has that magic ability.
Yeah. Here, CBS reported that President Trump has been and Larry, you've mentioned something important, and we've seen the new footages, the new pictures of cruise missiles being hit by air defense system of Iran, Israeli cruise missiles.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, is it cruise missiles or drones?
Cruise missiles. Cruise missiles.
Yeah. I haven't seen that footage.
Let me see if I can bring it up here for you. But
I mean, I believe you, but I just haven't seen the footage.
no, I'm just trying to find it here. But Larry, when it comes to Russia, I mean, we've learned that yesterday, MBS was trying to talk with Russian president. What basically they want from Russia?
Now, did MBS call Putin, or did Putin call MBS?
Yeah, MBS called Putin.
Oh, yeah. It's cue up the Beach Boys song. Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Ron. It'd be singing, help me, Putin. Help me, Putin.
Basically the difficulties they have is the war together with the case of the Strait of Hormuz, both of which are too much, are all related to what's going on with the war.
Yeah. What you saw the day before, it may have been earlier yesterday, or it was at least the day before. The Saudis, Qataris, Emiratis, Bahrainis, Kuwaitis, they tried to bring the UN Security Council a resolution that would have said, okay, we got to condemn, not only condemn Iran, but put together a UN force to go force the Strait of Hormuz open. And the Chinese and the Russians, and surprisingly the French, said, no, that's not happening. We're not doing that. Forget about that. So that may be why MBS is calling. He realizes, okay, if he wants an end to this thing, he's going to have some Russian support. And I think, just as Lavrov tried to tell him, the dummies wouldn't listen. They're trying to tell him, hey, you're blaming Iran, and you're not condemning the United States and Israel for starting this mess. That's not even, that's ridiculous. You're not even being fair.
Yeah. I think there is a lot to happen this weekend, Larry, and let's see what would happen. And we may need to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's, we'll know within 24 hours, 36 hours max. Originally, my understanding is the plan was to go forward with this ground assault.
Yeah.
Whether they'll now put that on hold, particularly in light of some of this aircraft getting shot down, may change the calculus. Trump, the problem is Trump has shown no sign of backing away from continuing the war. He's going to intensify it before he de-escalates.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry.
Hey, well,
great pleasure as always.
Hour flies by.
Yeah.
Sorry, Colonel Wilkerson had to leave us.
What if I told you there's a place where I can birthday my way? Where there's the most games to play, epic adventures, good food, insane.
Like that shit.
It has been revealed that the military targets hit by Iranian missiles in central Israel were buildings belonging to a company called Aerosol, causing the most damage to the drone factory complex. Aerosol in Petah Tikva, east of Tel Aviv, is an Israeli defense company that designs, manufactures and operates drones for government and military clients. Aerosol systems are used throughout Israeli defense sector, making the factory an important node in the production network, specializing in Israeli military UAV platforms and technologies. The company produces 4 tactical drone platforms built for reconnaissance, intelligence and surveillance missions, and also produces composite components for major Israeli defense programs including spare parts, which are used in the helmets of F-15 and F-16 fighter jet pilots. Ibrahim Zolfikari, spokesperson for Qatam Al-Anbiya headquarters in Urgent Statement 92, stated that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy and Air Force carried out several joint and rapid strikes on the occupied Palestinian territories and the U.S. in the Gulf region, from Thursday evening to Friday morning. People quickly circulated footage, showing another angle of the impact of Iranian ballistic missile, falling straight from the sky towards Petah Tikva, accompanied by the never-ending sound of sirens. It only took a few seconds for the sound of the explosion to reach its direct target, and people nearby were shocked while filming the scene of the arrival of the advanced missiles. In another part of the Air and Space Force's offensive and missile operations, and in accordance with the return fire tactics and continuation of missile launches, more than 50 locations in Tel Aviv and the occupied territories were targeted by the Khorramshahr 4 multi-warhead missile. Footage from the impact site of the Iranian missile attack in Petah Tikva shows that there is a large crater behind the Aerosol factory, but the factory's strategic warehouse is flattened to the ground. Several live channels attempted to trace the crash site, claiming it landed in an open area. This happened despite reports from Israel that initially censored the event, stating that the missile had destroyed a building. Another report said that a strategic warehouse had been destroyed. If a ballistic missile with a large payload lands right next to the target and destroys it, this is not an attack in an open area, and such reports constitute disinformation, in which case Aerosol's strategic warehouse no longer exists.
And tranquility of nature with new outdoor collections from Living Spaces.
Well, my dear truth seekers, I listened carefully to Donald Trump's speech during his address to the nation. And, unfortunately, that Trump's speech raised further questions rather than providing clear answers, which ultimately has already harmed the rating of the 47th President of the United States. Listening to Trump, it seemed that the US President was preparing the ground so that American citizens would not perceive the future withdrawal of the United States from the current war with Iran as a defeat for Washington. In particular, Trump, who is known for the exceptional inconsistency of his judgments, made it clear in his address to the nation that the unblocking of the Strait of Hormuz is not so important for the United States. According to him, the problem with the Strait of Hormuz should be solved by the US allies, since they are the ones most dependent on this strategic area of the Middle East. At the same time, it is worth noting that 2 days earlier, Donald Trump had officially stated that unblocking the Strait of Hormuz is the main objective of the United States, and that the war with Iran would continue until this strategic area is completely liberated. By the way, during his address to the nation, Donald Trump once again confirmed that the current war with Iran will end in 2 to 3 weeks. At the same time, he noted that after the completion of the main phase of the military operation, the United States will withdraw its main forces from the Middle East, while the Pentagon will leave some units in the region for possible targeted strikes against Iran in the future. My dear friends, it is worth noting that practically all American think tanks have concluded that if Trump withdraws from the current war without liberating the Strait of Hormuz, this will be considered a strategic defeat for the United States. According to American military experts, no matter what statements Donald Trump makes about Iran, the world community will judge the results of this war solely on the Strait of Hormuz, since that strait is the main topic amid the growing global energy crisis. Trump can talk as much as he likes about the destroyed Iranian fleet, ballistic missile stocks, and the deprivation of Tehran's nuclear program. However, if Trump leaves control of the Strait of Hormuz to Iran, it will be a strategic defeat for the United States in this war. The fact is that Tehran has already made it clear that if the United States refuses to pay reparations to Iran for the damage caused, Western countries, including Washington's Arab allies, will pay huge amounts of money for passage through the strait. Tehran has officially confirmed that Iran will charge a fee for passage through the Strait of Hormuz, until it fully reimburses the damage caused by the United States. Nevertheless, many American military experts are confident that Trump will withdraw from this war, even though the United States will suffer a strategic defeat. According to them, Trump simply does not have time to conduct a military operation to liberate the Strait of Hormuz. Secondly, Trump is very afraid of heavy losses among the American troops. At the same time, experts are confident that after the end of the war with Iran, Trump will unleash all his anger on European NATO allies, who have become participants in this strategic defeat of the United States. Thus, the show is just getting started. And the most exciting part of this show is ahead of us. Meanwhile, after the recent Iranian attack on the United Arab Emirates, during which Iranian drones were able to hit dozens of military installations, the UAE authorities terminated the contract with Ukraine to combat Iranian unmanned aerial vehicles. As it turned out, during the recent Iranian attack, the Ukrainian servicemen were unable to shoot down any Iranian drones. As a result, guarded by the Ukrainian servicemen, all 5 military facilities were completely destroyed. In addition, the Ukrainians themselves also suffered losses. It is well known that during one of these Iranian attacks, an armory in Dubai was destroyed, along with 21 Ukrainian officers. My dear truth seekers, let me remind you that a few days ago, Zelensky returned from his Middle East tour, after which he proudly announced the achievement of agreements between Ukraine and the UAE in the field of security. Back then, this bearded dwarf said that Ukrainian officers, due to their extensive experience in fighting against drones, would guard strategically important facilities in the UAE. However, unfortunately for this political clown, time has shown that the so-called experienced Ukrainian officers are absolutely powerless against the Iranian drones. Meanwhile, Iran continues its systematic missile attacks on American military bases in the Middle East. At the same time, you may have already noticed that the IRGC periodically repeats missile strikes against U.S. bases that Iranian drones and missiles have already attacked. As it turned out, Iran attacks the same American military bases several times, every 2-3 days, for a reason. The fact is that Americans relocate their military aircraft every day, transferring them from one military base to another. This is done so that expensive American military planes do not suddenly come under an Iranian missile attack. However, on March 28, luck turned against the Americans. They failed to evacuate their military aircraft from the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia in time. As a result, Iranian missiles and drones managed to destroy 2 KC-135 tanker planes and 1 airborne early warning and control aircraft, Boeing E-3 Sentry. In addition, American servicemen also suffered losses. Middle Eastern sources confirmed that during this missile attack, 5 American soldiers were killed, and 12 others received injuries of varying severity.
This winter, thousands of homeowners in Texas are switching from gas to a heat pump system. Here's why. These new all-electric cold climate heat
And now, 5 days after this successful Iranian attack on the Prince Sultan Air Base, the authoritative Arabic newspaper, Al Riyadh, has made a rather shocking confession. In particular, this newspaper confirmed that while Zelensky was negotiating with the UAE authorities, a fire raged at the Prince Sultan Air Base, destroying hangars with American military planes. Later, some American sources also confirmed this information. In particular, referring to the statement of one of the American servicemen, they confirmed that on the night of March 28, at the Prince Sultan Air Base, the U.S. Air Force lost not 1, but 2 Boeing E-3 Sentry AWACS planes. It is reported that this aircraft was destroyed along with the hangar. However, the U.S. losses did not end there. As it turned out, on the same day, the U.S. Air Force also lost 2 very rare electronic attack aircraft, Lockheed EC-130H Compass Call, which were located in the nearby hangars. By the way, these are the only production aircraft of the U.S. Air Force whose price, with a full set of equipment, exceeds that of the stealth bomber, B-2 Spirit. Well, my friends, everything that is happening in the Middle East indicates that this Trump adventure will go down in history as the biggest failure of the United States in the 21st century.
The Easter weekend that things would be calming down after the president's speech, but that is not the case. After the president's speech, the United States struck a massive bridge inside of Tehran. And by the way, this bridge was part of a new documentary as really the pride of Tehran, because it was going to cut down commute times for the people that live there, shave about an hour off of commute times for the Iranians who go to work in that city. Trump posting this: the biggest bridge in Iran comes tumbling down, never to be used again. Much more to follow. It's time for Iran to make a deal before it's too late. There's nothing left of what could still become a great country. President Donald Trump.
The cruelty of it really gets me. At least President Biden had the manners to pretend he didn't blow up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Right. At least he lied. Like at least
he had the courtesy
lied
of
about
lying to us about
Biden
it.
lied about blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, which has descended Europe into an energy chaos and crisis. But okay, so Trump is gloating about it on Truth Social, posting videos about a bridge come tumbling down again, so the Iranians can't go to work. And what sort of strategic target is this? Is this a war crime, striking civilian targets? Imagine if the Golden Gate Bridge in California were suddenly struck. I mean, that's what people are comparing it to today. Would we label that a war crime? Most assuredly. But yeah, I guess war crimes, who cares anymore, right? I guess that's the way we're going with things. But meanwhile, Iran has struck back. So here is a strike at the center of the center of Tel Aviv just a short time ago, as confirmed on Fox News. Watch as this ballistic missile strikes into the heart of that city. Feeling the impact there as that camera is then jarred apart. Entire neighborhood on fire, as again featured on Fox News. So not AI, but also being shared across social media as well. And you can see rescue crews attempting to get there and put out this fire in this neighborhood where this ballistic missile has struck. We're also learning today that an Amazon data center was struck in Bahrain. Oracle was struck in the UAE. And that's exactly what Iran said they were going to do, which is strike Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all of these large American corporations. And that's exactly what they're doing. And by the way, the United States is not protecting them at all because, well, we can't. And that is one of the big revelations out of all of this. So we got more to talk about. I want to talk about the president's speech, but of course, these latest developments are worth bringing in Colonel Daniel Davis, host of the Deep Dive with Dan Davis, to get his latest assessment on all of these latest moves over the last hour or so. Colonel, great to see you as always.
Always great to be here, Clayton. Thanks for having me back.
So we watched your show this morning, and then, of course, your assessment of what the president was saying yesterday, and, of course, a lot of lies and inconsistencies. But now we see this latest escalation, and it seems like all of that has been, like, thrown out the window. Like what we heard last night in the president's speech seems to just be tossed out. So I guess any sort of ceasefire agreements, talk of peace, maybe all of that has been scuttled. Anyway, what's your assessment of this latest escalation this past hour or two?
Well, listen, I think it's just a continuation of really what he said last night, because he was talking about bomb you back into the Stone Age where you belong. I mean, that was kind of alarming to me on the surface of it, because he was clearly talking about punishing the civilian population, the entire population, not just going after the IRGC or some of the political leaders or so, but I mean, literally just putting in the crosshairs the entire Iranian population, which can only have the effect that we're seeing, which is it's going to solidify across the political spectrum everybody in Iran together against the United States and Israel. I mean, if anybody thought that, well, if you just hit them enough and cause enough pain and hardship to the civilian population, then they'll start putting pressure on their political government or whatever. I don't know what the logic was, what they think. It's never worked out that way. And in fact, it virtually always works out as we're seeing here. And so then now here today with this bridge situation, especially given that he literally bragged on it and posted it on his social media on Truth Social, it seems like that he's making good on that. And he's said all of it, said it on that Truth Social right there, that, this, he's using this whole all caps thing, make a deal before it's too late and all that. And listen, I mean, this is as close to a cut and dried war crime as you can get, because the only time you can hit civilian infrastructure, whether that's a bridge, whether that's electricity, power generation, is if it has a direct correlation to a military target. And at least from what I can gather so far, that is, I think your analogy to the Golden Gate Bridge is probably the best. It's just a civilian population there, and that has no military utility at all. Definitely has no military utility to anything we're trying to get done, because we're trying to just coerce the country through the destruction of its infrastructure to comply with what we want to do. It's not like, well, they need that bridge in order to get to a position here that we're trying to isolate them from, and that armored division goes across it, something like that. That could potentially be a legitimate military target, not this. And this just seems so pernicious, and it seems more like, I'm going to do this because I can, and what are you going to do about it? But it's going to work contradictory to anything President Trump wants. It will just make all of the people in the region, certainly in Iran, say, listen, the only path we have is to continue to resist and not give up no matter what, because nothing is off targets and nothing is off limits. So I think that this is, especially if things go south here, he may be brought up, President Trump may be brought up on war crimes charges himself or so. And you may think, well, it doesn't matter what anybody internationally does. We'll just ignore that anyway. True enough, that's probably how it's going to work out. But that's not to say that if there comes a Democratic-led House of Representatives that may say, hey, you represent our country here, and you could be impeached on something that is most assuredly a high crime and misdemeanor, and this may have a lot more relevance than even some of the stuff in the past, some of which was definitely politically motivated. But this one would have some substance to it, so it won't be something easily dismissed. I just worry about what's going to happen to our reputation, quite aside from that, too, because this is tarring all of us around the world. As people say, the Americans are now just this gangster type country that's doing all these things to other people, that just obliterating the rule of law, obliterating their own constitution, and now obliterating morality, what they used to want to be under the Reagan administration, a city on the hill, a model to be mimicked, and standards to be trying to live up to. And now then we're saying it's all about power. You do what I want or I kill you. And that is reprehensible to me, and it's deeply wounding to, I know, a lot of people in the United States.
But is it effective? Have we ever seen that work? So it seems to be this torture philosophy that if I hurt you and your people enough, you will bend the knee. And I'm searching my brain for when militarily that has ever worked. The Mongols, like what are we dealing with?
It didn't happen when we bombed, the Nazis bombed Britain and hoped that it would break the resolve of the British people.
But is there any other way to see it? Is that we are just going to inflict as much suffering on your civilian population until it hurts you, and it will eventually hurt, even though we don't see evidence of this, that they will rise up against you because we're hurting them so badly. That seems to be the philosophy, right?
I mean, I think, Natalie, I think you got it right on this, spot on. I mean, whether you're talking about like a torture situation against an individual or a collective punishment against a population. I mean, the Nazis tried it in World War II. We tried it in World War II against the Germans, against the Japanese. We tried it against the North Korean population during that war. It never worked. The Nazis tried it against the British at the Battle of Britain and trying to bring London to its knees. It never worked. It didn't work against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. It didn't work against Hezbollah in Lebanon. It didn't work against Iran in the Iran-Iraq war. I mean, anywhere you want to look at it, regionally, recently, older, back and further in history, it's never succeeded. I guess it just has this allure because frankly, it's almost a little like war porn, if I can use that term, because it's like people lusting to use power that inflicts pain on somebody who's powerless. I think that some people get off on that. I mean, it sounds horrible to even say out loud, but I mean, the evidence, I think, is pretty strong that that's something that needs to be considered.
And one of the whole justifications for going over in the first place was that, Iran killed 30,000 of their people. It's like, well, let's kill more to make it, better.
Yeah, we're liberating the people of Iran by bombing their infrastructure.
Yeah, of course, it was always a fraud to say that from the beginning. And of course, that's why we went from the 3,000 people that the Iranian government itself acknowledges were killed in all these protests. Then it went up to 10,000, then 30,000. And then last night, Trump jacked it up to 45,000. So it's just a number, and it's not even real. But it doesn't matter. They don't care if it's real or not. And obviously, President Trump saying back in January, you protesters, it just hurts me to see all these people being killed by this terrible regime, this theocratic Nazi type regime. We're going to come in to help you. Help is on the way. Just keep going. And then now he's like saying, yeah, we're just going to kill everybody. And we don't care. And if you just still don't do it, we're going to take all of your energy systems offline. We're going to destroy your oil infrastructure. Everything that literally could put and water desalination plants, which Trump also specified, which also is a war crime. He's literally putting the entire population at risk, and is now making good on some of those threats. So
can I just, before we move on, can I just say two things that give me some cold comfort here is one, the letter to the American people from the Iranian leaders yesterday shows that they know that this is not the will of actual civilians. We don't want to be doing this by and large. And the fact that these civilian populations will not be broken because there is still a human spirit underneath it that does not submit to evil. We see that people in Gaza are still alive, are still kicking. So anyway, I just wanted to share a bit from what you had to say.
So Colonel, I want to ask you on I'm confused because last night President Trump told us that they've been decimated. This is all wrapping up. And then this afternoon, we see this rather large escalation and Iran saying they're firing back and hitting, again, multiple targets throughout the Gulf countries that we are not protecting and helping. And at the heart of it, so we're hitting Amazon, Oracle, data centers, American company targets throughout the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz is closed and no ships are going through there. We're seeing oil prices spiking and skyrocketing at this point after the president's speech. So I'm just confused when we say that they've been decimated, their ability really to fight back has been incredibly incapacitated. How are we able to see ballistic missiles striking at the heart of Tel Aviv this afternoon or this evening and all of these American companies being destroyed?
Yeah, I mean, this is just more of that just disconnected from reality claim that President Trump is saying what he wants to be true, even though it's grossly contradicted by the physical evidence it's been from the beginning. And, I mean, he's been saying since right at the beginning. You remember, I want to say it was on the 5th or 6th day of the war. He said, we've all but won. It's basically over. And he's repeated that in different versions several times after that. And you keep seeing scenes like what you're seeing on the screen right now. And even though we are given a tremendous pounding to the Iranian side, and Israel is too, they are definitely getting hit and hit hard. And there's lots of stuff that's been destroyed. Lots of people have been killed. But that doesn't get into the system that Iran set up, where they have foreseen this in the decades past, where they had these significant underground facilities and missile cities and the ability to have missiles fire from under the ground. So you don't even have to have a visible silo, much less a mobile launcher, even though they still have a lot of those left. There's lots of firepower that they have left. And it was discussed openly many times before. And yet President Trump just keeps saying what he wants to be true. But it just isn't, and they're going to continue to do. They kind of shrug their shoulders and say, "Well, we can absorb this for a long time. We've done it for 8 years during the Iran-Iraq war when you were supporting our then enemy Iraq, and we can do it again if we need to, and we can spread this out over a long time." And they have the resources stored up in a protected location, and they almost certainly can make good on this, no matter how many times President Trump, says something to the contrary. Now, I'll tell you, there's one thing I want to bring up here, though. Didn't get a lot of notice last week, and it's something that I'm worried about when we start talking about this war, because there's clearly no military solution to it. You cannot force open the Strait of Hormuz, and you can say it's somebody else's job or get mad at NATO for not sending in their Navy. They're not stupid. They're not going to send their Navy to go to the bottom of the Persian Gulf. They would be fools to do that, and they aren't fools. But that means that the strait is going to stay closed, and President Trump can't just walk away from this one. So then you have to worry, if he tries to escalate, can he even do that? Because there's, the ground troops, there's only like 20,000 that are either there or on the way there, which is a pinprick on a map. I mean, you can't even hardly see it. It's not going to do anything. But last week, Laura Loomer put out this X post that says, I just have a sense that there's a big 9/11 type attack coming that would be 10 times worse than the actual 9/11. And I bet that a lot of these podcasters will be exposed that they have been actually helping some of these people. I don't know. I just have a feeling. And I thought that's weirdly specific. And I worry about somebody maybe thinking about doing some sort of a false flag kind of a situation here in a big way. And then they would immediately blame it on Iran. And then, the people like Tucker, people like Megyn Kelly, maybe even your show, something like that, where like you're given the truth about the situation. They say, he was given aid and comfort or something like that. Right. It's like they already have the villains marked. And so if anything happens, I'm really worried about it if it does, but I don't think we can dismiss that just out of hand.
No, I think an absolute. We've been saying for weeks that we think a false flag is going to be used. I mean, you just talked to former CIA agent Michael Scheuer on our show, who says that that's his big concern, that they would use some sort of a deranged Muslim as a false flag planting operation inside the United States in order to sow this type of discord. So I think you're spot on about it. And then, is Israel involved in it directly? We had on the other day, Joe Kent was on our show last week, And one of the things he said specifically is that every time we start to negotiate or have some sort of a move towards an off-ramp, the Israelis come in and bomb the people we're negotiating with. We need to constrain the Israelis. And I know he said that this morning on your show. We can't make any progress unless we constrain the Israelis. And then, of course, we just learned that J.D. Vance was basically going to be setting up this meeting with through Pakistan with the Iranian foreign minister, Kamal Karazi, who was seriously wounded as a result of these strikes.
And his wife killed.
And his wife was killed. So literally, J.D. Vance is going to be meeting with this guy, and then suddenly his wife is killed and he is injured. They tried to kill him, of course. I think we could point directly at the Israelis. President Trump was asked about this, like about these negotiations, and here's what he had to say about Trump taking credit for this. You can roll that one.
He's working on the deal, right? How's that moving? Is it okay? The big deal? You see it happening? So if it doesn't happen, I'm blaming J.D. Vance. If it does happen, I'm taking full credit.
Or you could blame the Israelis for trying to kill the negotiating team on that. Colonel, we'll get you out of here on this. We know you're up against a hard break. What do you make of that?
Listen, I'm just kind of sick and tired of I'm just going to be blunt about it. The White House letting another country call all the shots here. I mean, this isn't the first time that somebody has been assassinated that we went after. President Trump admitted in the opening rounds that there were some other people that we wanted to reach out to, at least in their theory, was that they would take out the Ayatollah and then they would have some other people that might be amenable to our position. And they were amazingly killed in the process. And it certainly wasn't by our side. And then the Israeli side keeps undermining everything that we're trying to get to an end. And at some point, doesn't the president of the United States have to say to Israel, shut the hell up, get back in your box, or something to that effect? Because if they're harming our national interests and undermining any attempt to get out of this already unwinnable war, and I'll just tell you that, there's no military solution here, not to get the Strait open, not to defeat Iran, etc. We have handed them, because President Trump listened to the Israeli side, we have handed them this opportunity now to hold a chokehold over 20% of the world's petrocarbons. And there's no way we can force it out of them. And now that the only way they're going to do it is if we give into some pretty significant concessions to them, which I can't see the pride of President Trump ever willing to do. But the alternative is that then we just keep fighting and they keep holding on to the control of that. And that price of oil will keep going up and the cost of everything will keep going up. And then you have the literal possibility of either recession or, God forbid, a depression if it goes down that path. All because we're not telling Israel to just get in your lane. He should tell them, listen, do you want to go and do something with Iran? I think it's a dumb idea, but have at it. You're going to do it. And you're going to do it without us. You're going to do it without our weapons, but you can do what you want. I'm going to do what is best for our country and is not continue down a militarily unattainable path that will harm our country long term. It has already, and some things that the cost of a lot of this won't come out until later, but I think we've already baked in some real long-term costs, both with our allies in the region, our allies in Asia, and our allies in Europe. I think this is going to be a very costly affair.
Блокбастеры российского проката и сериалы, мультфильмы и шоу. Весь архив без рекламы. 200 каналов в прямом эфире и в записи. Смотрите 14 дней бесплатно на сайте etvnet.com.
Well, Dan Davis, one of our favorite analysts, basically I'm going to you every day to make sense of what are the truth and what are the lies and what do we know. So
Very
thank you for your expertise. Yeah, it's great to have you on Redacted.
Thanks, Colonel. Great to see you.
Right.
All right.
He's killing it. His numbers are really good. Give him a like, give him a follow on YouTube, because it's great for us to at least, our government can do what they're going to do. It seems like they're going to, but we don't have to swallow it. So we can know this, and that's all we can do at this point.
And turning to alternative media to actually get some answers instead of these people who are bought and paid for on like the mainstream media networks, of course. So great to have Colonel on the show. All right, coming up, we're going to have another great guest on the show. Steve Friend is going to be here, FBI whistleblower. Someone who's been incredibly critical, of course, of Pam Bondi, who, by the way, was just fired. And according to reports inside the White
taking longer. So no longer 2 to 3 to 4 hours. We're talking about 12 hours, for example. If we're live streaming or whatever, you'll have attacks after that too, very extremely long and very successful too, by the hour. And in the 90th wave, Iran targeted, of course, very strategic locations. Let's begin with the video, and then we'll go through what exactly it was that Iran attacked. So that was the 90th wave coming from Iran. What did they attack exactly? Iran attacked many important locations in this wave, both inside the occupied territories and with American terror hubs in the region. So the statements and the reports confirmed that the 90th wave targeted American industrial facilities, including facilities in Abu Dhabi and Bahrain, in addition to military facilities belonging to the Israeli company Rafael. They also targeted a hideout of American soldiers near Manama, which resulted in casualties and injuries, with ambulance operations continuing for hours. In response to the targeting of the Iranian infrastructure, Israeli air bases and facilities were bombed, including Tel Nof, Palmachim, and Ben Gurion. The strikes included military gathering centers in several areas inside Israel, including Tel Aviv, Haifa, Eilat, the Negev, and Beersheba. Now, these attacks that came from Iran clearly still have a level of coordination with the Lebanese resistance. Why? Lebanese resistance yesterday targeted Palmachim with a Scud-D, with a 1-ton warhead. Now, Iran is finishing the job. They're finishing the job following multiple and repeated attacks. Now, if we want to just give a small example here, if Iran and the Lebanese resistance, and now Yemen, of course, is targeting too, if they're attacking multiple bases repeatedly, many times, we're talking about deliberate campaigns and calculated campaigns to wipe them off, as in not leave anything. If they once targeted the hangar, they'll target strategic assets in them. If they targeted the ammunition depots, for example, they'll target a HQ. Every single thing needs to be eliminated, exactly like what they're doing with the American bases in the Gulf. They're doing that to Israel now. And the videos of the damage that came from Israel were indeed intense. Let's have a look at one of the videos of the landings, and then we'll share, of course, the level of destruction too coming from all of these areas.
When I used to think about taxes, I would just cringe. I used to use a CPA. I just send all of
So that was one of the attacks that came in the area of Petah Tikva in the central part of occupied Palestine. And the damage was severe. Let's have a look at some videos of the damage after the landing of the Iranian missile. Now, and they're talking as well about targeting a facility. These were strategic facilities inside the occupied territories. Iran is targeting them, hitting them, and destroying them completely without any interception whatsoever. And here is one other video of the landing from a different angle.
Show. 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 Yo.
So as we can see, some of the missiles also led to floods taking place in those areas where the missiles landed, clearly without any Israeli success in any sort of interception following these attacks. There were, of course, a couple of other angles. Let me share them with you here, as we can see in this video. Yeah. So significant, very significant attacks coming from Iran today against the genocide state. And the attacks were again successful on multiple targets inside of the occupied territories. Now, there were also attacks against the hideouts of the United States. This time it's in Bahrain. And that's something worth talking about because the United States is resorting to multiple means in terms of camouflage, hiding in civilian locations, hotels, wherever it is, to try and thwart any of the Iranian attacks against them. They know that the bases are no longer functional, although some forces still remain in the bases, as has been evident in the past couple of days when multiple American soldiers were recording videos of them inside of the bases when they were being hit. But the fact that they are using hideouts in Al-Manama too indicates how tough the situation is for them, not only in the UAE, but in other locations as well. And that proves that the United States does not have an answer to any of these attacks coming from Iran. Iran is targeting multiple locations. This is, for example, Erbil in a recent attack that they conducted. Have a look at this video here. They targeted Bahrain. They targeted other assets in the region. Multiple very expensive assets of the United States were completely destroying the bases, basically. And with the hideouts in the UAE, that's coming simultaneously with repeated attacks against what remains from the Fifth Fleet. You see, the Fifth Fleet was one of the most strategic places of the United States. Anything to do with intelligence control, strategic movements. This is what happened to the Fifth Fleet again.
Escape the cares and worries of the day and soak up the beauty and tranquility of nature with new outdoor collections from Living Spaces.
هكسره يا علي يا علي يا علي
So that was the attack on the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. And of course, they said that they're targeting the hideouts too in those areas. These were also additional videos coming from the genocide state in the central part. Of course, Iran targeted multiple strategic locations with the 90th wave in what is being described in Israel as a growing intensity coming from Iran and from the resistance fronts. And the coordination is still happening because this was reportedly coordinated with Yemen. 2 days ago, they had a 3-front attack. In many cases, they coordinate with the Lebanese resistance that's now using weapons it hasn't used in its history. Ansarullah in Yemen, of course, finger on the trigger, as they say. And, whenever someone wants to attack, they'll go ahead and cooperate with them. And Israel is left defenseless. That's the central part of Israel's strategic locations, bases being destroyed, literally getting flattened. Yesterday I told you about what they used to say about Gaza and what they say about Lebanon to this day in Israel, flatten them, make it a parking lot. They're turning Israel now into a parking lot, bit by bit. Okay, all of that is very important. What else happened today? Iran declared that, actually posted a video of a fighter jet being attacked near the Qishm island in Iran. Have a look at this video. Now, if you notice, the fighter jet is throwing what appears to be like fire bombs, heat bombs, to try and avoid any attack initially. And then it got hit following the attempts. Now, the United States so far, it didn't confirm anything about this fighter jet. But it's very clear that Iran's capabilities in targeting fighter jets are always increasing. Now we have more and more fighter jets being attacked, especially after the targeting of the F-35. That was extremely important. So we have a situation here where nothing is working for them. And these are some of the recent of course, some of the recent videos that they have been publishing. Now, it's not only Iran. The Lebanese resistance is also very active in that front. They are increasing all of the attacks coming against Israel. However, one of the most important things that happened in the past 24 hours is the statement that came from the head of the Iranian army. The head of the Iranian army said something about the invasion. Okay, the United States is planning to invade, and they're talking about an attempt, maybe they'll attack Khark Island and what have you. Maybe they'll have an invasion on the ground. What did he say, the head of the Iranian army? He sent a very strong message. And that message was as follows. Let me share this with you. In the event of an enemy ground attack, not a single one of their fighters should survive. So, firstly, he's confirming that there is a ground invasion being prepared, despite the talks coming from Donald Trump. By the way, they're going to be from the United States, most likely. Israel is hardly going to do anything. Israel doesn't have enough ground troops for Lebanon and Gaza, let alone Iran. But they hit the jackpot now. Donald Trump sent the American cannon fodder to the meat grinder. And from an Israeli perspective, they want the Americans to go. And Iran is now saying that, well, if any of them come, no one should survive. That means that they're preparing something really big in case the United States actually goes into Iran or even tries to go into Iran. Because as ridiculous as it is, by the way, this whole idea even of conducting an attack against Iran, a ground invasion, in the form of a ground invasion, there are elements in the American establishment that want this to happen. And if the United States president himself managed to drag the United States into this, he can potentially take a few thousand soldiers and go and kill them. But what's for sure, especially by these statements coming from Iran, is none of them are going to be returning. And that's what's going to happen. Okay, so all of that, and Trump is having, and we're going to get to Trump in a second in his statements. Hormuz, is it going to be open? Is it not going to be open? You know, Trump is saying to the Europeans, you go and open it, you know, take it, right? As if they're entitled to. Take the oil. What is the actual situation coming from Iran? What is their official position? Is there an official position, or we've been speaking about this official position, but some people forget this official position. And the foreign minister of Iran made it clear again. Hormuz Strait remains closed to vessels involved in anti-Iran war to prevent aggressors' misuse. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the Strait of Hormuz remains closed to vessels involved in the continued war launched by the United States and the Israeli regime against Iran to prevent the abuse of aggressors from the strategic waterway. In a telephone conversation with the Vietnamese Foreign Minister Lee Wai-trung on Wednesday, Araghchi described the US-Israeli military aggression against Iran as the root cause of insecurity imposed on the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Based on the principles of international law and in order to prevent any misuse of aggressors from the Strait of Hormuz for conducting unlawful attacks against Iran, this waterway is closed to vessels belonging to parties involved in the military aggression against Iran. So it's very clear. We have a situation where the strait is actually not fully closed, it's not fully shut, but it is shut on, well, anyone tied with the United States and Israel and the aggression coming against Iran. And again, completely debunks all of the accomplishment rhetoric coming from the Trump administration towards Iran, because they can still control the Strait of Hormuz. And that's one of the main things that the United States went there actually for, control of a strategic strait and control of the oil resources in the region. Now, Trump himself made some interesting statements yesterday. Okay, it looks like Donald Trump is completely losing it now. I'm not sure he knows what he's talking about. He's constantly contradicting himself. speaking very weirdly about multiple things. But let's listen to one of the things that he had to say.
And tonight I'm making a little speech at 9:00, and basically I'm going to tell everybody how great I am. What a great job I've done. What a phenomenal.
Oh, what a great way to start your speech. Yeah, I'm gonna have a speech. I'm gonna say how great I am. I mean, he's actually confirming the fact that he is a psychopathic megalomaniac. Yeah, I'm gonna say how great I am. And don't take it as a joke, please. He's serious. I know people are laughing, by the way, but they're not necessarily laughing with him.
Phenomenal job. What a phenomenal job I've done. But seriously, if you didn't have me, if you had some different type of a president, you wouldn't have Israel. I know you're big Israel fans. Frankly, and tonight I'm making a little speech at 9:00.
So in a sense, two confirmations here. I am a psychopathic, arrogant individual. Two, without us, Israel doesn't exist. That's true. That second part is accurate. Without the United States, Israel doesn't exist. But what he's doing here is trying to be, closer to the lobby that controls things behind closed doors, and confirm the fact that without the United States, Israel wouldn't have been able to have this situation. Israel wouldn't have been able to conduct all of these operations inside, Gaza and so many multiple parts in the region. But he also said some other nice things. He was talking about Iran too. What did he say about Iran? Because he's been telling us that, they're almost there and what have you.
She is a Holocaust survivor who has seen far more evil than any human being should endure.
Let's see what he had to say. Trump, in one of the statements that he made, said the following. The Strait of Hormuz could actually open up naturally. Naturally how? What, on its own? Or would you be a participant in opening the Strait of Hormuz? No. According to Trump, he could have a certain resolution with Iran, and it would open naturally because, there wouldn't be anything that needs to be done afterwards. As in, what do you mean open naturally? It was already open naturally. And you went there into a barbaric war against Iran, and Iran shut it because of your barbaric war against it. And now you're saying that it might open naturally. The thing that Donald Trump is saying here is actually, we made a big mistake. We have no control. If we de-escalate, then Iran might be able to open the strait on its own, and we will have nothing to do with it because we don't have enough oil. I mean, how else can we explain it? He's been speaking and talking about so much nonsense in recent weeks and days that it's difficult to keep up with him. Firstly, we don't need it. Then it might open on its own. Then he'll tell you all sorts of stuff like 2 to 3 weeks remaining now. 2 to 3 weeks, according to him, and then we might actually reach a solution. And then the regime is talking, and then there's a new regime, and then there's another regime. And what is all of that about exactly? So it wasn't only that, though.
At 9:00.
he appeared to be perhaps under the influence. Now, I'm not confirming that he is under the influence, but I don't know. This video, for example, let me share this video with you. And look at how he was behaving in this video.
Boom. Then another one, boom. And she was ready to go. She walked back to the corner. She said, I've never been hit like that. Boom. Then another one, boom. And she was ready to go. She walked back to the corner. She said, I've never been hit.
Firstly, that jab puts Lennox Lewis to shame. I mean, we all have to agree. But then really?
Like that. Boom.
Boom, right? Boom. Like that.
Then another one, boom.
Boom. Boom, like that. Oh, what is this exactly? Boom. Boom, like that. What is he on?
And she was ready to go. She walked back to the corner. She said, I've never been hit like that. Boom. Then.
Or what was he describing? The children that he used to beat on the Epstein Island? I'm not sure. Anyway, he doesn't seem level-headed to me. He seems like something is happening to Donald Trump. I mean, it's not normal for this guy to, I mean, we can say that it's becoming more normal, but really it's becoming more and more ridiculous now. Okay. Moving on to another thing that I want to talk to you about. The Israeli Broadcasting Authority today said a couple of interesting things. And one of them was that Iran is using new missiles. What are these missiles that they're using? According to the statement that came from the Israeli Broadcasting Authority, Iran is using a multi-warhead missile with warheads that are over 100 kilograms each. So we're not talking about bomblets anymore. We're talking about huge bombs coming from one missile only. The images that I showed you before as well, some of them were coming from these missiles that had multiple warheads. The missiles that I showed you yesterday that were literally demolishing some buildings, some of them were multi-warhead missiles too. So Iran, in essence now, it's only escalating by the minute. And you have an American president who's talking about a victory, about obliteration, about potentially sending boots on ground in Iran, when the fact of the matter is the only thing that we're seeing on the ground is Iran advancing more and more and increasing its lethal attacks against the genocide state and the American bases in the region. And there is no turning back. They're only attacking and increasing their attacks, increasing their strikes. Anywhere that there is an American base, they will attack it. And they are not stopping that escalation. Now, of course, that was in relation to the Iranian side. One very active front is, of course, also the Lebanese resistance. Today, the Lebanese resistance targeted an Israeli helicopter. Let's have a look to what they had to, what they actually posted just recently. So that was one of the recent videos of the Lebanese resistance having attempts at targeting Israeli helicopters I'm not sure if there was a targeting here and then the actual helicopter was landing down. But clearly the path of the helicopter indicates either an emergency landing or the fact that they were actually attacked by the Lebanese resistance. The Lebanese resistance is increasing its attacks again. Yesterday we spoke about their missile that they used for the first time in history, the Scud-D missile. And now they are trying to target multiple Israeli helicopters, and they're having these intense battles in the southern part of Lebanon, where Israel is trying to have multiple incursions in the south. Now, recently, there were more statements coming from Israeli officials about occupying the southern part of Lebanon. The Israeli so-called defense minister spoke about not allowing anyone to return from the north to the south, people who were expelled from their homes in essence, unless there's safety for the Israeli settlers in the north. The Israeli settlers in the north, by the way, they're causing a lot of damage for Netanyahu's government, because to them, he returned them to the same situation they were in before. So some of them were trying to rebuild their lives, and now Netanyahu decided to attack Iran. This led the Lebanese resistance to conduct an attack against the Israeli genocide state. And this attack is becoming more and more intense day after day, as in the Lebanese resistance is only continuing to escalate. Now they're talking about, and they're actually implementing a campaign on the ground to completely cut the north from the south. And these attacks that are coming from the Lebanese resistance in the south indicate that regardless of these operations that are coming from the genocide state, all of their combatants, all of their fighters in the south remain there. No one left. And we're talking about the literal borderlines between the genocide state and the southern part of Lebanon. This was, by the way, an extended version of the video that was released by the Lebanese resistance. But what's more dangerous is what they're talking about in relation to settlement in the southern part of Lebanon. Now there are more talks that the Israelis want to settle in Lebanon, because only through settlements will they achieve their objectives. And Netanyahu is going towards that direction eventually as part of the expansion. However, of course, those delusional dreams are not going to be implemented simply because of the fierce resistance on the borders with the genocide state. And the Lebanese resistance also published a video of the recent compilation attacks. Let's have a look at their recent publication in this video.
الآلية كانت هون. هذا الحائط نزل عليها وأذت الآلية كليتها على الحائط الثاني على الضغط. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الآلية بعد 5 رمت على الشركة تاع امبارح، علما انه الاسرائيلي رمى امبارح طلع على المنطقة هون، حرق المنطقة كلها مثل ما انكم شايفين. بعدها من امبارح بالليل لهلا دايرة بعد فيها صاروخ، بس ما بدنا نرميه بحاجتها للآلية مثل ما انكم شايفين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وما توفيقي إلا بالله. الآلية اللي رمت امبارح فادي 5 ولا انرمى عليها الإسرائيلي، حرق المنطقة من هون من تحت بلطف رباني، بس نبرش واحد رايح ودولاب وهينا رجعناها مطرح ما كانت أصلا.
So, by the way, what the Lebanese resistance is saying here in this video, in this initial part, of how they actually have some of these launches being targeted by Israel, and then they reuse them. So Israel says, for example, that this launcher was destroyed, but then all of a sudden, the Lebanese resistance manages to repair. It's like minor damage and whatever, and then use it again to attack the genocide state. And they're basically launching from the same location.
هلا حننزلها.
So you can see now they're launching missiles again from the same launcher that Israel would say that it actually destroyed. This is how much flexibility the Lebanese resistance has in Lebanon. And now they're saying how Israel basically targeted the launcher for the third time. So, in essence, it gets attacked multiple times and then used many times after. So that's when Israel tells you that, oh yeah, we destroyed launchers, right? The Lebanese resistance literally gets them repaired. It's like they have an abundance of them, but if they have one that's that can be used again, they'll use it, and they'll target it multiple times. And I believe there was a fourth round here afterwards.
صلي على محمد وآل محمد. تل إيليا بعد ما استهدفها الإسرائيلي بعد رابع رماية، وإن شاء الله هلا جايين بدنا نصلحها. هلا هالآلية
So it was attacked 5 times and they went back to repair it again.
هذا أول تعديل. هناكم شايفين بين الدولاب.
This is unbelievable. What? So that is the 5th launch. My goodness. I mean, so Israel would usually say, by the way, that they like destroyed 5 or 6, right, launchers. But in essence, they were targeting the same ones. So that was the Lebanese resistance for you. I mean, Israel again would say that they annihilated and removed everything, all of the threat, and then they would have that. Okay. Now, one of the final things that I wanted to talk to you about is a statement that came from the spokesperson of the Armed Forces HQ in Iran in relation to the capabilities. You see, the United States always says about how they reduced the Iranian capabilities very much, and, you know, there's hardly anything left. You know, if you listen to the American officials, they'll tell you, oh, Trump, yeah, 82% of their launches are gone now, and they don't have anything left. I mean, they'll have a couple of missiles, but that's it.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest refund, roughly 37%.
Although Iran is only escalating. So today there was a clarification from the spokesperson of the HQ, Ibrahim Zulfiqari, who said that the country's enemies, they know nothing about Tehran's extensive and strategic capabilities. You know nothing about our extensive and strategic capabilities. He stressed that the enemy's information about Tehran's military capabilities and potential is incomplete, and that the centers that you think you have targeted are small, while our strategic capabilities are produced in places that you know nothing about. Zulfiqari pointed out that the process of counting our missiles, drones, and strategic equipment will not lead you to a result, and you will be mistaken. Do not try to do that. The war will continue until you surrender, and expect even more intense operations. Now, this is something that we have been seeing on the ground. I mean, he doesn't have to say it. To be fair, Iran is only escalating, and he's telling them you will pay the price for your aggression, for the aggression you started, and that the war will continue until you surrender. Expect more intense, broader, and more destructive operations. Now, Trump, again, they're noting here that he said that they're going to be targeting Iran very hard within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and he would continue to destroy the Iranian military platforms. How substantiated is this, of course, these statements coming from Zulfiqari? Well, like I said, he doesn't really have to say it. We know that. I mean, we're seeing it. It doesn't, actions speak louder than words. But of course, from their perspective, they're making that statement because some people say that, oh yeah, Iran is incapable and what have you, they're losing. However, let me give you one small example. Some of the Iranian systems that are under the ground, they would have entry points and exit points, right? So if the United States or Israel would be monitoring them, they'd think, okay, that mountain, it stores the missiles, or that mountain stores the nuclear project, or that mountain over there, this entry and that exit, that means everything is here. When really and truly, do you know what it would be, by the way? It would be an entry and an exit, and then that's it. Where it would lead to, what it would lead to, and they don't know anything. The American and Israeli, of course, they know nothing about it. It could be an entry to a different point, or a dummy entry, like the dummy aeroplanes that they had and dummy launchers that the United States was striking. In multiple occasions, the United States and Israel were striking paintings on the ground. Iran painted drones and painted devices. Now, of course, that's aside from the actual targets that they had. They did have actual targets, but a lot of the targets that they actually hit are non-existent. And it gets even more complicated with the strategic assets of Iran, whether it's to do with launchers or missiles or the nuclear capabilities or their air defense systems. Why? Because the air defense systems are still active and they are increasing in accuracy. They're targeting some of the fighter jets and taking them down. They're thwarting many of the attacks that the United States is conducting. Yeah, not all of them, of course. And there is no such thing as absolute protection, by the way, with any country. And you have an example, a live example, Israel. Israel has supposedly the most advanced air defense systems from the world's most militarily equipped or most powerful country, arguably so, the United States of America. Iran penetrates all of those layers with missiles that they produce. Therefore, with Iran, they will have no chance. And that's why Trump is really stuck in this situation now.
All of us who can make a difference and must make a difference.
Firstly, I have a deal, and then I'm talking to a new regime, and then Pete Hegseth will tell you there's a new regime, and there's no regime. They're all over the place, and Iran is clear in its statements that they are looking to go up until the United States surrenders. And what does it mean that they go until the United States surrender? I mean, this is the scenario that we've been talking about from the beginning. That is the only way things could end. One side will have to say, well, that's it. Iran's not going to talk because there's no one to talk to from their perspective. There is no point in talking. Number two, all the negotiators were backstabbers, and the United States attacked them twice during negotiations. And on top of all of that, they don't have the authorization from the supreme leader to negotiate, which means they are going full force. And don't take the Iranian statements lightly. If Iranians do not have safety, the rest will not have safety. Their enemies will not have safety. And that's what they're implementing on the ground. Now, all of that indicates that unless the United States, and there are indications that it would surrender and portray it as a victory, Iran will continue to attack. And what is this surrender from an Iranian perspective? Not rebuilding all of the bases in the region and getting out, withdrawing completely. And that would be arguably the biggest strategic defeat the United States has ever faced in its history. The United States already is facing the biggest loss in its military equipment and assets in its history already, by the way. Now, and Iran doesn't want them to go back. They want compensation. And if the United States will not compensate them, then they will, be charging. And if the United States will not be complying, they will destroy assets, the equivalent of the destruction that they caused. There is an argument that, and again, I'm not saying that it's true, but there's an argument that the lifting of the sanctions of Iran, alongside from it potentially being a measure out of, desperation, to level the market slightly with the oil, but that could be translated into that. They're compensating Iran. Add to that the fact that Iran is going to be charging now with the Strait of Hormuz. Some reports are saying that they're going to be charging with Oman, not just Iran. They have good ties with Oman too, and both of them are on the two sides of the strait, which would make sense. And of course, Iran doesn't have to do that, but based on their relationship with Oman, they could potentially have an agreement there that Oman would benefit from. And then we have a situation where the United States is paying more for its own companies manufacturing and facilities in the Gulf. So less profitability unless the prices skyrocket again and don't reduce, by the way. So that's an option. So the prices of oil can go up and remain high after this, especially in Western countries, because Iran hasn't been affected. Some countries haven't been affected too. But there are countries that have been hit really hard. And that would lead to long-term problems, long-term financial problems. And the United States wouldn't be able to balance everything. It would take them years, and assuming they would want to reduce some of these prices, whether it's to do with more exploration in Venezuela or in the United States or whatever other means that they have or want to do to balance things out. Now, should the United States not comply with the Iranian demands, that means we're going to have a long-term war. That means it's going to take more time up until the United States reaches that stage, because Iran is fighting up until the last second. And these are the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream.
Coffee. Follow me.